Today, we'll be retouching this image and taking it from this to this. Okay, so this wasn't originally the photo I had in mind for this second tutorial, but after doing some initial editing, I realized this one would be perfect to show you some basic principles about dodging and burning. But before we start dodging and burning, I'm just going to go ahead and do some basic retouching that I do on every photo. If you want an explanation of what I'm doing here, you can go back and watch episode 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward through this part. So in my head, I see this image as working much better in black and white. And for the purpose of this tutorial, a black and white image will show the effects of dodge and burn much better. So I'm going to go ahead and make a black and white layer, and I'm just going to screw around with these sliders a little bit. Each color channel, you can change the value of to kind of alter the look of your image. Can give you a little bit more of a unique look rather than just dropping a plain kind of gradient filter on top. So I'm gonna be focusing on the main part of the face, especially the eyes. If I dodge and burn one part of any image, it's definitely the eyes. But also show you some of the other areas that I would normally focus on. So I'm going to pause for just 1 second and kind of explain the basic theory of what dodging and burning is. So dodging, these terms come from the old days when you used to develop your photos in a dark room. When you would dodge your shadows, that would mean you would lighten them up, you would bring up the exposure. When you burn your shadows, that means you darken them down. So basically, in shorthand, dodge equals lighten, burn equals darken. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and make a curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to name it dodge. I'm going to go ahead and make another curves adjustment layer and name it burn. I'm going to adjust the properties of this curve and bring down the exposure to darken it. And right now it will darken the whole image, but to fix that, we select our layer mask and we invert it by pressing Command I. So I'm going to do basically the same thing for the dodge layer, except I'm going to bring the exposure up, and then I'm going to invert the layer mask to hide it. So right now, this is our normal image. There's no dodging and burning going on, but we have our layers in place to non-destructively edit this image. And that's the main thing you want to keep in mind. So when you're working with layer masks, you will be using your black and white palettes. Black hides, white shows. So I usually bring my flow down to around 8%, a small feathered brush. The first thing I always do is I dodge the iris and the catch light, especially on the more shadowed side of the face. I feel like when you can see that texture of the iris really brings out a lot of the personality in the portrait. And then if we flip it back and forth, we can see that's already making a huge difference. So I burn the pupils to make sure they're nice and black, and then I usually go around the edge of the iris just to add a bit extra pop. Depending on the model or the look of the photo that I'm going for, sometimes I fix up the makeup, especially the eyeliner a little bit. As always, you really don't want to overdo it, especially if your final image is going to be black and white. You're going to want to flip back and forth between just to make sure your dodge and burn reads when it's going to be in black and white. You can dodge and burn while you're in black and white, but I find it's easier to pay attention to smaller details when you're flipping back and forth. You see things in color that you wouldn't see in black and white, and vice versa. So now I'm going to flip over to dodge for a little bit. I usually get right underneath the eyebrow. I'm just going to lighten up this shadowy area a little bit, let it a bit more light. You can see already after just a few minutes of dodging and burning, it's already made quite a difference. This is really, it just feels like you're painting with light. Dodging and burning is probably my favorite part of any retouching process. So for the lips, I usually dodge the natural highlights and just burn around the edges a bit. Dodge down the bridge of the nose. Just do the Cupid's bow a little bit. Depending on how long you spend doing this, you can really drastically alter someone's face or the mood of a portrait just by dodging and burning your shadows and your highlights. So I'm going to dodge the highlight on the top of the cheek just a little bit, just to make it pop a bit more. And that's the great thing about when you're dodging and burning your own images. If you didn't have a makeup artist, you can kind of become your own makeup artist and do a bit of contouring yourself. It really gives you a lot of control over the image that you may not have been able to have with the light modifiers that you were using. So if we flip back and forth one more time, you can see we're coming quite a long ways already. So one more thing that I usually like to do with my portraits, just to keep attention on the center of the face, I usually darken the hairline and around the edge of the face. I just find it adds more depth, makes the forefront of the face pop a bit more. So I'm just going to darken this down, dodge over here, just to even it out a little bit so it draws less attention. All right. I love the way that the color mix channels for the black and white really make the freckles pop. And if we had more time, we could probably go through and individually burn the freckles to make them pop even more, but all right. I really like how this portrait is looking. The dodging and burning has taken this so far. I'm going to make one more curves layer, and I'm just going to bring the ambient exposure down quite a bit. Again, I just want to keep focus on the center of the face so people can really pay attention to all those small details that we just worked on. So I'm going to keep my flow at 100, and then I'm just going to use the layer mask to bring that exposure back up in the center and just kind of feather it off around the face. So again, you use the black brush to hide and the white brush to show. So you can see on the layer mask, it's all white around the edges. So that's where our low exposure curve is working. And I'm just going to darken down the hair a bit more just to make it even less distracting. Okay, and here's a bit of a before and an after. And even in color, this image looks quite nice, but the black and white just gives it that extra little something. It really adequately shows off her stunning features. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and put some final touches on, and I'll see you on the other side. Let's take a look at the before and the after. So make sure to like and subscribe and comment anything you might want me to cover in future videos.